David, and I already warned David I was probably gonna say his last name wrong because it's like a Digimon to me. So I went, oh, okay.
Oh,
But we have seen Chase's team before, so this time we're actually gonna see David's team on the stream for you guys. A very popular Pokemon that is coming back into resurgence now is gonna be Lycanroc. There is gonna be also a Sylveon, a Tyranitar, Baxcalibur, Meowscarada, and Amoonguss. It will show up on your screen in just a little bit as soon as Chase sort of locks in his team.
I mean, if you're Chase, you got to be feeling really confident right now. You're undefeated so far in the competition. You're coming into Top Cut. And I mean, one of the funny things, we were kind of talking to Chase in between rounds and stuff as well. He's not practiced with this team. He's just picked it up and kind of gone, let's have some fun with it. And it's certainly paying off.
Must be nice. Chase, how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a skill that I think we all wish we could have. But again, sometimes that kind of, I suppose, lack of pressure you put on yourself can give you the edge that you need. And it's certainly paying off. We're in Top Cut now. On the opposing side, however, for David, there's some really cool Pokemon on here. Obviously, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about the Baxcalibur, but the one thing that's really cool again is that sand combination of Tyranitar and Lycanroc. We've seen, you know, Lycanroc being able to double its speed when the sand is up there, and it can do a lot of disruptive stuff. You know, things like Endeavor, Endure has been a really nice combination. We saw Barish use previously. Let's see if David maybe can utilize it as well.
I really love that in like 2 generations past when it was first introduced, that Lycanroc is finally getting sort of like its day like to play in the sand, right? It's one of those Pokemon that I think when it was first introduced, we were all kind of excited for it, especially when it got its own special Z move where it was like, oh, you can get rid of terrain, and then just nothing ever really sort of came from that. But now in this format where all of a sudden like speed is key more so than ever, you have like Tyranitar like being able to pair up with a bunch of other Pokemon, and this time the choice is going to be Lycanroc, so another little bit of a dog day here. Baxcalibur is something that I saw, I think, at our last tournament. Never really got to see it in action, but it is like the pseudo legendary for this generation. Kind of like a really cool Pokemon to see. I've never actually quite seen it in action.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these kind of play out a little bit. Of course, on Chase's side as well, there's a lot of interesting Pokemon we showcased at the beginning of our broadcast. But the leads are going to be coming out is Goldengo and that Grimmsnarl paired up with Lycanroc and Tyranitar. So again, Grimmsnarl in a great position to start setting up some screens. Some things like a Reflecto could really help benefit that Goldengo. It doesn't want to take any unnecessary damage at this point.
Yeah, I really like that, you know, Goldengo, Grimmsnarl, at least this Grimmsnarl will be in a better spot than the last one that we saw, which the screens were like broken immediately. Goldengo going for Protect here for Chase, gonna make sure it doesn't get hit at all. Reflect now as Grimmsnarl sets up screen, does what it does best and just sets up screens and you know, mitigates damage. Lycanroc going for the Rock Slide here is not gonna connect with that Goldengo thanks to that Protect. Will actually hit that Grimmsnarl though, does a good amount of damage here, and Tyranitar able to go for the Assurance on to that protected Goldengo. So Chase rightly identifying, hey, you're not going to touch this Goldengo right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've seen the double up previously as well. That Assurance being a really nice pick on Tyranitar, particularly as you know it's going to be slower than that Lycanroc. It can follow up and do damage as well once it's taken a couple of attacks. But Grimmsnarl able to go for the Thunder Wave. You know, having that Prankster ability to connect is going to slow that Lycanroc right back down as well and give it the chance of potentially getting fully paralyzed. Lycanroc breaks through, however, finds its connect with the Rock Slide on both Pokemon, taking Grimmsnarl below 50%, but Goldengo able to break out and go to make it rain.
And that Lycanroc will activate its Focus Sash here, is going to hold on with that 1 HP as Tyranitar is going to take some damage here. Goldengo Spectral Attack is going to drop here. Tyranitar going for the Assurance, not flinching this turn, unable to pick up the knockout here though on that Goldengo, as Goldengo, I think that is a weakness policy activation here, is going to boost up that special attack, so going to actually negate the drop that we just saw from Make It Rain. Grimmsnarl is going to get hit by the Sandstorm, and honestly, you know, not terrible. At least in this format, you don't have to play guessing games with what Grimmsnarl is carrying. I know that was one of the most stressful things in previous in the previous format, in the previous game, where like Grimmsnarl can carry anything under the sun on its move pool.
Particularly as it would often use Trick, and then it would just like throw its item onto your team, and then it would be so disruptive. In this situation, however, as well, you know, Tyranitar can just go for another Rock Slide here, but if you're Chase, you're going to want to start switching up your ball position.
Ooh.
Goes for the Protect on the Goldengo, however, I wonder what Grimmsnarl's going to get up to.
Yeah, and so Goldengo gonna make sure. Oh, Lycanroc can't move because of that paralysis. That earlier Thunder Wave gonna really make sure it stays here. Tyranitar going for the Rock Slide here is unable to connect again once more with that Goldengo thanks to that Protect. However, is able to hit into that Grimmsnarl. Not quite enough to pick up the knockout here. It does get the flinch though, so we are not gonna see what that Grimmsnarl was actually going to do.
I mean, taking a look, I think the only move it could have gone for there was the Spirit Break. Everything else would have been affected by Prankster and would have gone first. So Spirit Break maybe just trying to pick up the KO against that Lycanroc, just get it off the field. But you know, didn't happen on this occasion. Lycanroc is here to go for another attack.
Ooh, and now you're kind of in a rough spot because if you're Chase, you really needed that Grimmsnarl to be able to pick up that knockout here. But Chase actually going to protect Gholdengo in a more traditional way, going to withdraw it here, bring out Garchomp actually onto the field, which will actually benefit as well from that Sandstorm from earlier. Grimmsnarl going to set up a light screen now, so no Spirit Break here is going to have both screens up. Lycanroc again unable to move because of that paralysis, still hanging on with that 1 HP as Tyranitar goes for the Assurance, is going to hit into that Garchomp. Garchomp's rough skin though going to be able to at least take a little bit of HP off of there, as Grimmsnarl is slowly getting hit and chipped away at by the Sandstorm.
But I have to say, I'm really crediting both Grimmsnarl and Lycanroc for staying on the field in such precarious situations. I like the adjustment by Chase bringing in the Garchomp. You can now apply a lot of pressure with something like an Earthquake. It doesn't necessarily even matter if you knock out your Grimmsnarl. I think it's not doing a lot anyway at this point. It's set up the screens. You kind of want to get your heavy hitters in now to take the benefit of those defensive capabilities on Chase's side. And the Garchomp can then deal super effective damage to both Lycanroc and critically the Tyranitar there with something like the Earthquake.
Yeah, and we kind of see that it is sort of like waffling between either like an Endeavor or an Endure, trying to see maybe you can just get the Garchomp down to as little HP as possible. But you know, that paralysis really should just hurting him in the long run here. We are going to see a Terrasilize from this Tyranitar as Chase actually brings back that Grimmsnarl, which was on its last legs, is going to bring out Corviknight instead. That Corviknight, that Mirror Armor ability, really nice to be able to reflect things back into it. The Terrasilizing now from David was on that Tyranitar. That Tyranitar going to be going into a flying type, so doesn't have to worry about things like Earthquake here. Will still take a lot of damage if there's a Rock Slide on Chase's Garchomp, which it actually does have, so kind of playing like a little bit of a guessing game here.
Yeah, the Corviknight could indicate possibly there's the Earthquake, but there's Lycanroc having a terrible time. That's 3 for 3 paralysis here as Garchomp does go for the Earthquake. Since we'll be able to get rid of that Lycanroc, it's going to be put out of its misery with that paralysis, can go get itself checked out by Nurse Joy and come back a little bit healthier into game 2. But of course, the Tyranitar having the flying type with the Terra is going to be able to avoid that Earthquake too.
Oh, and that Ice Punch, that Ice Punch from David's Tyranitar, unable to pick up the knockout here on Garchomp, which actually is like 4 times weak to it. So surprising that it's able to hang on. Actually, thanks again to just, you know, being such a sturdy player. I love how everything is just holding on by the skin of their teeth here. And Meowscarada able to hit the field now. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more from this Meowscarada, like other earlier ones that we've seen before.
I think again this is the thing where you've got such a hyper offensive meta, you have to invest in bulk in a lot of places as well, otherwise it's just going to be very quick matches, you know, KO after KO after KO. And I think having that extra bulk and capability allows these Pokemon to hang on a little longer. Meowscarada certainly throws a few tricks into the effect though. Garchomp isn't going to be able to survive much longer from anything that might come out. Meowscarada has an incredible speed stat as well, so it's going to be able to deal some damage with something like the Flower Trick, or even if it wants to go for Sucker Punch and try and deal with that Garchomp nice and early, it can do. However, the Corviknight definitely poses a risk to it. Corviknight having access to something like the Brave Bird is going to be able to deal with that Meowscarada nice and quickly, and we know the Meowscarada isn't carrying a Focus Sash, it's a Life Orb.
Alright, Garchomp is like, I'm not gonna get knocked out this turn, and is switching out, still on his last legs for another Pokemon that is in the red here. That Grimmsnarl is coming back, won't get knocked out by Sandstorm damage at least. Meowscarada going behind to protect on this turn, not wanting to take any flying type moves from there. But Corviknight opting to go for a Tailwind instead, giving Chase that speed advantage, doesn't want to be on the back end of that Tyranitar's moves, as Tyranitar's Ice Punch does very minimal damage into that Corviknight.
Yeah, I like that Grimmsnarl's rejoin the field here. You know, it preserves the Garchomp a little bit in the back for when, you know, it can come in and actually utilize that Tailwind without having to risk taking damage on that particular turn. I think as well, when we look at the Garchomp on Chase's side, it isn't carrying Protect, so the only way to preserve it in the face of that Meowscarada was to go for the switch. The Grimmsnarl as well can come in, it can go for, you know, a Spirit Break, try and deal with this Meowscarada, you know, do some damage to the Tyranitar. It's got a few options, and you don't mind if your Chase Fit goes down, because it allows that Garchomp to come back into play.
Yeah, and I think Chase, you know, despite the fact that, like, hey, you might have still have your Pokemon, they're all really, like, just slivers of HP left. So you're really playing sort of a dangerous game here, where if you make one wrong switch, all of a sudden, you could just get steamrolled into this. Meowscarada actually gonna leave the field here. We're gonna see that last Pokemon that David chose is gonna be that Sylveon. Gonna hit the field. We at least, you know, next turn when Sylveon screams, things like, you know, get knocked out. Thunder Wave from Grimmsnarl gonna connect down into that Tyranitar, might pay off dividends like it did with that Lycanroc that we'd seen earlier on. So Tyranitar speed also gonna get cut in half here as Brave Bird from Corviknight goes into that Sylveon. That Sylveon taking it very nicely. Corviknight taking recoil damage from here as Tyranitar goes for the Assurance into that Corviknight, gets it down under half health here, so breaks through the paralysis here, but Corviknight is able to munch down on that berry and restore its health thanks to that Citrus Berry.
Yeah, lots of damage being dealt out this turn, but no KOs. Critically, Grimmsnarl is still on the field, and this is actually a nice position for David here, because it means that the Tailwind turns on Chase's side of being burnt through without Garchomp being on the field, so it's not going to be able to reap the benefits of that speed. So Sylveon coming in nicely, you know, it can deal with a lot of damage into that opposing Grimmsnarl, for example, but it does have to worry about the Corviknight. We know from the Corviknight side, however, it's not carrying any, you know, Steel-type moves here. Brave Bird can survive another one of those, while Corviknight is going to have to take a little bit of damage itself. But of course, the issue with Sylveon is it doesn't have the capability to deal a lot of damage to Corviknight in return.
Yeah, it's nice that at least it has Pixelate so you can do like maybe extra damage to other things, but like I said, Corviknight being a steel type too, like being able to resist it. But Sylveon actually opting for Protect on this turn, gonna make sure it doesn't take any damage, as Grimmsnarl is going for another wave, isn't gonna be able to connect to the Sylveon thanks to that Protect. And now we've got sort of this like this Tyranitar that's gonna be able to like hit as Roost from Corviknight, gonna get rid of that flying type in this moment, but is gonna restore its HP. Rock Slide now gonna connect both Pokemon, but because of that Roost, Corviknight is no longer a flying type for that turn. Grimmsnarl, which we actually were already really surprised that it lasted this long, is finally knocked out, as is Reflect actually.
Yeah, that's true, and of course Corviknight not taking too much damage from that Rock Slide. It allows Chase the capability to bring Gholdengo back onto the field now, actually, not that Garchomp. But I think Gholdengo actually has a little bit more utility here. It can apply a lot of pressure to that opposing Sylveon. Of course, Garchomp doesn't want to take any Hyper Voices with that Pixelate making a Fairy type move. You can leave Garchomp in the back to kind of close out the rest of the game. Gholdengo can potentially deal, you know, a huge chunk of damage to the opposing Sylveon, although Sylveon does have exceptional special defense. And I've been surprised time and time again in this format so far about how many times it can actually survive and make it rain.
Yeah, and now if you're looking at like the fact that Meowscarada is the last Pokemon on David's side, you also have to think, okay, that Corviknight's actually probably your biggest threat right now with that Brave Bird. Sylveon actually going to play tag team with that Meowscarada one more time as that Meowscarada hits the field again. So they just keep switching out for each other as Make It Rain from Gholdengo is going to be able to hit both Pokemon. Doesn't quite pick up the knockout on Tyranitar, is going to take that special attack drop here as Corviknight goes for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird going into that Tyranitar is going to be able to pick off one of the bigger threats on David's side of the field. Meowscarada and Sylveon are both going to be the remaining Pokemon here, but that Meowscarada on that switch and just took in a lot of damage from that Make It Rain.
Yeah, it certainly did. Of course, the one thing the Meowscarada has up its sleeve is that Sucker Punch. You know, it can deal big damage to that opposing Gholdengo. Taking a look at Gholdengo's side, however, on Chase's side, it has a utility to go for something like Nasty Plot or Protect and work its way around that Sucker Punch that will only connect if you are going for an attacking move, possibly allowing Corviknight to pick up the KO against it. Sylveon, however, is going to be able to deal enough damage to Gholdengo in return, so I think the speed tiers are going to be very interesting here.
This is one of those moments where I think Tailwind just expired as well, so now you have to play the game of like, are they gonna Tailwind first? Are they gonna attack first? Sucker Punch is always like one of those moves where you have to be 100% confident of what's gonna happen here. Sylveon actually having Yawn as one of its moves as well is actually like really interesting to me because it's not exactly a move that you're used to seeing, and it's gonna go ahead and I think try into that Corviknight. I mean, he's got like 8 seconds left on his move time here, but instead of opting just for an offensive sort of pressure here, as Meowscarada hides behind that Protect, didn't go for a Sucker Punch on this turn, is going to make sure it doesn't get hit by something like a Brave Bird, as Gholdengo actually also protects on this turn. Gonna maybe try to see what David is doing against both of his Pokemon here. Corviknight is able to freely set up that tail one more time, giving the speed advantage to Chase. Against something like Meowscarada, which is extremely fast, is something that you want, but Hyper Voice is going to connect onto the Corviknight, not do a lot of damage, but most importantly doesn't hit the Gholdengo here, and actually no activation of any sort of item here from that Sylveon.
I mean, the Corviknight's in a great position. There's not really a lot that either Meowscarada or Sylveon can do to it at this point. Whereas, you know, the Corviknight can deal super effective damage to both the Meowscarada and then can deal quite nicely with the Sylveon with another Brave Bird. Garchomp coming into the fray, though, is again going to be able to deal damage if it's able to even move at all. Meowscarada going for the Sucker Punch. That was the nice switch coming in there on the Garchomp side of things, as Corviknight does go for the Body Press, deal with the Meowscarada, and now you've got the Sylveon against, you know, yes, it can deal with Garchomp, but it hasn't really got anything for Corviknight.
It's going to be able to Yawn on this turn, so it's going to make sure that the Corviknight stays asleep the next turn, so maybe you can Protect and try to stall off a little bit, but Chase actually like getting rid of the Meowscarada, yeah. So now you're at this point where like honestly, I think Chase was playing the more dangerous game where he was switching constantly, because seeing his Pokemon in the red the entire time and just being like, oh, when are they going to get knocked out? Because one knockout and your revolving door of Pokemon is suddenly stopped in its tracks.
But you're also playing the game not only in front of you, but a couple of turns ahead. And if you're Chase, you had to really visualize where you wanted the end game position to be, the Pokemon you need, and that's where the switches are really interesting. Stomping Tantrum going into the Protect there of the opposing Sylveon, as Corviknight actually stays in, doesn't want to switch out and reset that Yawn, which I think is really interesting. So now it's going to take a little bit of a nap.
I really kind of love the fact that the Garchomp went for Stomping Tantrum, because it's one of two things, right? If it protects, that's fine, because then all of a sudden Stomping Tantrum does double damage in the next turn. But if it connects and you're doing damage onto the Sylveon, so really it's sort of like a win-win for like this Garchomp. So we'll see it use Stomping Tantrum one more time. Not quite enough to pick up the knockout here. Will activate the Citrus Berry here on like that Sylveon. So actually what you had said about not switching up the Yonta reset is actually really interesting, because now, I mean, your Corviknight is still in the spot where like it has to take a lot of damage for it to get knocked out, but there's no real reason to risk that.
Yeah, I see what you mean though. I mean, look at how much the Hyper Voice did. It was barely anything to that opposing Corviknight, and at the end of the day, you can always wake up and roost and just get any extra HP that you may need in order to close out the game. But Gholdengo in the back again, I think is really nice. You don't have to worry so much about Make It Rain not picking up KO against Sylveon when its HP is as low as it is, only 61 points remaining. So Gholdengo and Corviknight going to be able to clean this up as the two Steel types against one Fairy type.
And we usually know how that's supposed to go. Who knows though, David might be able to surprise us as Gholdengo goes for Protect, Corviknight stays asleep, and Sylveon is just gonna scream until things get knocked out. I mean, honestly, you know, if there's still HP and there's still PP for you to use, there's still a way for you to win.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's good, and also you can utilize these extra kind of seconds to think, hey, how am I going to adapt into game 2? What are my strategies going to be, my leads? Am I going to change things up? And sometimes you just need that extra time, but Gholdengo making it rain, bringing Sylveon down to its knockout, and it's going to be able to take game 1 for Chase.
I'm wondering though, because like when you're looking at the way that they're playing, Chase plays a very like, oh, I can switch and pivot and stuff here, and I think if David is able to really figure out when Chase is supposed to switch, you can really punish some of those switches. I feel like a lot of the time, like, honestly, it's easier to say it sitting behind the desk here, but you know, David protecting a lot of his Pokemon in some of those turns, instead of like maybe capitalizing on a way of like dealing damage out into Chase's Pokemon, because they were already like almost knocked out.
Yeah, that's true. Chase was in a very precarious situation. I think you said earlier, you know, playing a dangerous game at turns, you know, switching Pokemon in that had low HP, and sometimes we see that happen and it's like, oh, the trainer's just trying to sack the Pokemon so that they can have a free switch, reset a stat, something like that. But actually for Chase, the Pokemon were then staying on the field. They were able to switch and survive the turn, and sometimes it was a little bit of a catch-22, because you're like, actually, if you're Chase, you would actually quite like it to have been KO to bring that Pokemon back in, but he was able to still roll with it really well and kind of capitalize on the passive plays that David was making. I think definitely going into this game too, you know, David had all the utility needed. Sylveon in particular was able to apply some good pressure to Pokemon like the opposing Garchomp and the Grimmsnarl, and I think it's maybe just about switching on that offensive button, hitting the KOs a little bit quicker in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, also I can't discount the fact that Lycanroc getting
oh, that was so
then,
unfortunate.
You know,
3 for 3.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
That's rough, especially because it's like it's so kind of devastating just to see it be like, well, maybe it won't happen again. Well, maybe it won't happen again, and you know, third time's a charm, and yet still it's a charmed life for Chase, but not so much for David in that aspect.
Yeah,
but we'll see how they adjust in game 2. I think honestly, like, there was nothing really wrong with David's lead. Like, that Lycanroc Tyranitar is such a devastating combo if you're not prepared for it, if you don't have a way to like outspeed the Lycanroc or mitigate that speed. But Grimmsnarl, Corviknight here for Chase, and actually that Tyranitar Lycanroc combo one more time for David.
Lycanroc's got to watch out though. Grimmsnarl's on the opposing side for Chase, and we know that Thunder Wave can deal so much disruption to Lycanroc if it's able to connect and pull through on the dice rolls. But Tyranitar again in the position where it can start going for, you know, the assurances, it can go for some rock slides. Lycanroc as well in a position where it can just keep going for rock slides, dealing with this opposing Corviknight. But Corviknight has the utility again to go for that Tailwind, and particularly when Sand is up and Lycanroc's got its speed doubled, you want to make sure that if you're Chase, you've got the speed up on your side too.
Yeah, and I think that Corviknight was such a pain in the butt for David too, that you really have to take it as a threat more seriously here. That Grimmsnarl going for the Reflect here, Lycanroc going for the rock side. There is a flinch, there is a way here maybe for that Corviknight. Nope, it is going to be able to break through that, able to go for the Tailwind, set up the speed advantage here for Chase. As Tyranitar actually goes for the Assurance now onto that Corviknight, does a considerable amount of damage, and now Grimmsnarl going to be the only Pokemon on the field taking that residual damage from the Sandstorm.
Yeah, I mean, the Rock Slide as well, dealing very little damage. Reflect really paying off for that Grimmsnarl. Assurance able to still come through, but it's not, even if you go for that again on David's side, it's not going to be enough to pick up the KO against like Corviknight. And as you said, Regina, it really was a key Pokemon for Chase in game 1, so you want to get rid of it somehow. It also allows Chase the opportunity to maybe, you know, think, if there's a way I can switch another Pokemon in, if David is being forced to target down my Corviknight, possibly I can capitalize on this. Something like the Groudon is going to be then forcing something like the Tyranitar to go into that Flying Terror.
Yeah, and I think now, like, you know, Corviknight is such an interesting typing. I know that when it was first introduced, we all really wanted to use it. Grimmsnarl, though, saying, hey, Thunder Wave, we'll see you again, and we'll see exactly how well it can, you know, stop this this Lycanroc. Body Press from Corviknight does so much damage into that Tyranitar. Lycanroc, though, saying, not today, is able to get the,
good damage.
Yeah, is able to get the Rock Slide connecting with both Pokemon, and actually gets a critical hit now on that Grimmsnarl, probably in revenge for all of the times that it was unable to, like, move through paralysis here. Assurance from Tyranitar able to do some more damage into that Corviknight, but that Citrus Berry was able to at least heal up a little bit of, like, that damage from before.
Yeah, and the sand you can see has put a bit of a timer on that Grimmsnarl. A couple more sand terms are going to be enough to remove that Grimmsnarl from play. And you can see David really thinking, maybe I need to make an adjustment here. I think Sylveon would be nice to, you know, stop that Tyranitar from having to take some damage. We know that Tyranitar and its Dark type doesn't have to worry about the Thunder Wave coming out from the Grimmsnarl. It's not going to be affected by Prankster, but Sylveon can come in and start dealing a little bit more damage. Light Screen, however, is going to stop it in its tracks.
Grimmsnarl went, hey, I know you have other Pokemon back there, so we're going to set up Light Screen so that the Hyper Voice doesn't do as much damage. Corviknight, taking a little bit of a rest down on the ground, is going to be able to go for that Roost. Is going to take super effective damage now from that close combat. Lycanroc going to take its special defense and defense drop for its troubles. However, Sylveon gets in basically for free here. Is going to take a little bit of damage from that Sandstorm, but honestly, not a bad trade-off if you're David.
Yeah, David has to watch out for that Lycanroc though. We've seen it be paralyzed before, and it needs to be able to start dealing enough damage to get some KOs. Whereas Chase, I think, is playing this so defensively well. Corviknight has the utility to keep going for these roosts, keep being able to gain a lot of HP, and then unfortunately David's Pokemon is sitting ducks to whatever the partner Pokemon is. While it's Grimmsnarl, you don't have to worry too much. It's the issue when Grimmsnarl goes down, or the Pokemon in the back is going to be something like a Garchomp is going to be able to deal some good damage. Something like the Goldengo is going to be able to threaten both of these Pokemon, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Chase trying to find a way to get that Goldengo in as soon as possible.
And David wanting to make sure the only damage Sylveon takes is from the Sandstorm at the end of the turn, as Thunder Wave from Grimmsnarl is unable to connect, saying, hey, this Rock Dog is the only one you're going to be paralyzing today. Corviknight going for the Body Press, though, into that Lycanroc is going to activate that Focus Sash, so Lycanroc able to live another day here, is going to be able to get another attack down into that close combat, into that Grimmsnarl, which was able to just be such a pain for David last game. It's finally going to go down far earlier than it did before. It's going to be down 2 stages, though, to its defense and special defense, but now Chase is free to kind of adjust as he needs to, especially against the Sylveon and that Lycanroc.
Yeah, I like that David's been able to deal a lot more pressure coming out in this game one. Mostly, I think, thanks to the fact that Lycanroc is able to move. Garchomp's joining the fray, no, not Goldengo in this case, which again can apply pressure with something like an Earthquake. But you have to watch out for that Sylveon. I mean, there has not been a terrestrialization on Chase's side. Possibly on the Garchomp, you could go for that Terra-type ground, deal even more damage with something like a Stomping Tantrum or an Earthquake, and then you don't have to worry about taking super effective damage from the pixelated Hyper Voice.
Yeah, it's really just interesting because I think David is a little bit more offensive this time around, which is, like I said, like punishing a little bit of how Chase has been playing defensively. But I think Chase is still in a fantastic spot because, like you had said, if he is able to go for that Terrasilize with a Garchomp, that Earthquake is just going to do a lot of damage. Lycanroc, you know, on its last little 1 HP left. So now it's just a matter of like, how are you going to deal with the Sylveon? Because Corviknight has actually still been able to stick around for a lot longer than I expected to.
Yeah, well, Lycanroc actually not going to be a KO here. It's going to stay out in the back, bringing in a Mungus. And I like this adjustment here, giving David capability of being able to take attacks, draw in attacks, particularly if it's something like the Stomping Tantrum, and then also critically be able to throw some spores around potentially. We know that a Mungus can do many, many tricks. Garchomp is indeed going to go for that, I was about to say Dynamax, but you know, we're out of that time here. Going for that Terra Ground type, which I think is really key, and allowing you to not take much damage from this opposing Sylveon, and being able to utilize the Earthquake. Obviously, Corviknight not going to take any damage from it. If there was Lycanroc still, it would have been KO'd, but instead you're going to get some just damage onto that opposing Mungus, and it's decent damage as well. Sylveon takes a huge chunk. Another one of those should be able to finish it off, even though it has been able to eat its Citrus Berry, and a Mungus in a dangerous spot too.
Alright, and Corviknight setting up another tailwind here for Chase. Honestly, it's been kind of crazy how, I guess, like, not really free, but, like, how, like, well Corviknight's been able to set up the tailwinds consistently here. And thanks to that terrasilizing for Chase's Garchomp, doesn't take as much damage as it would have from Sylveon Screaming with Hyper Voice. Amoonguss here, though, also kind of a great choice because at least it's able to redirect, but it's also facing off against a Pokemon that has something like Brave Bird, and then something that is able to do spread damage. So really, not exactly, like, its favorite spot to be in.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Regina. Honestly, there is phenomenal plays here from Chase to be made. You could just go for that Earthquake, deal with the Sylveon, deal a significant chunk to Amoonguss, even though you won't pick up the KO with Amoonguss. Tailwind is up on Chase's side. Corviknight can go for that Brave Bird and pick up a KO, and even if David wanted to play defensively going for a switch, Lycanroc was 1 HP, it's switching onto the field, it's not able to go for Endure or anything like that, it is going to be KO'd.
Alright, and Lycanroc saying, hey, you know, I've got 1 HP left, I might as well just like sacrifice myself for this. As Amoonguss is switched out, is going to be able to get some HP back thanks to that Regenerator ability. Sylveon protecting itself this turn, can't take another Earthquake from Garchomp or a double down from Chase's side, but Garchomp, thanks to that boosted Terralize, is going to be able to knock out this Lycanroc, which, you know, had so much HP before that 1 HP finally going to be able to get knocked out. At least was able to break to the paralysis this game. Corviknight going to use Brave Bird, going to hit into that protected Sylveon spot. Still in a really good spot though for Chase, you know, are able to at least deal consistent damage. Oh, that is so much HP back for that Amoonguss. Oh my gosh.
I mean, the thing is, taking a look at the Pokemon in the back as well, you've got Tyranitar, you've got Amoonguss. Tyranitar's going to go down to an Earthquake. You've got to remember Tailwind's up on Chase's side as well. And yes, Amoonguss has got loads of HP back thanks to Regenerator, but with the combination of Earthquake plus Brave Bird, if that Corviknight's able to hang around, then that's just going to be absolutely destructive. The speed's just against David here.
And it's also just unfortunate because, you know, you want the Tyranitar Sandstream for your Lycanroc, but it's really just also benefiting the Garchomp on Chase's side because then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, right, I forgot you also get the benefit from this. Like, really, at the end of the day, Sylveon's the one who's hurting the most here. Even with the Terra typing, you know, you might be able to do some extra damage to that Corviknight, even if you Terra type here. At least you... That's actually kind of wild to me because now you're going to be taking extra super effective damage from the Earthquake here with the Terastallizing into the fire type. So like you said, the speed is really just working against David's favor because Lycanroc was really the only like speed control-ish Pokemon that he had.
Yeah, and you know it's a Choice Scarf Garchomp, so it's going to be locked into these Earthquakes anyway. There's really not a lot Sylveon can do. Possibly, you know, if we just want to call out Sylveon just wanting to go for that lovely shimmering prettiness that it gets from the Terraform, because there really wasn't anything else that could be done here. It's not like Garchomp could make the mistake of switching to Stomping Tantrum, allowing the Sylveon to go for any kind of damage here. You know, Terra Blast with the Fire type into Corviknight could have been really nice, but not when there's a Choice Scarf Garchomp opposing you.
And then, you know, just to like add like even more to that, Chase saying like, hey, I know that, you know, you're gonna get knocked out, my Garchomp's gonna go first, so I'm gonna Roost afterwards, get all that HP back, and then be in a fantastic position to just clean up against this Amoonguss. Yeah,
he's played this really well, and you can see the forfeit being locked in by David, meaning Chase will be advancing to top 4.
Yeah, and actually I think both of the last of our top cut matches are just coming in at the same exact time, so we actually are going to definitely hydrate because that sand game was so drying to my throat from all
I have to credit you, your puns today are on form. I know it's the first of the year, but like you're setting a precedent for us commentators right now.
Yeah, I love the way that Chase played that though. I love the adjustments that David had in there, but honestly